First of all, it's an exciting day for us. It's a day that has been a long time coming. Through all the trials and the tribulations of this discussion, I think we are now positioned to be able to explore all of our options. I think Mayor Kreisman did a great job in terms of protecting the city's interest, the city of St. Petersburg, but most importantly, protecting the Bay Area's interest and the desire of the Bay Area to keep the Rays somewhere in the Bay Area. I think it's an issue that is ready to be resolved. I think we all recognize that in its current configuration, the business model for the Rays is not working. And I think the ability for them to look elsewhere, including Hillsborough County, is going to be important. We're prepared to move forward, recognizing that this will be, and I need to underscore this, a very difficult deal to do. It will be complicated. It will be expensive. And if you ask me right now how we would pay for it, I wouldn't have an answer for you. But I do know this. The Rays deserve our collective best efforts, both Hillsborough and Pinellas, to find a solution to this opportunity. Whether it's in Tampa or Hillsborough County, or whether it's in Pinellas County, the ultimate goal, and I think you will hear this from all of us, is that we find a way to keep the Rays here. And if the decision of the Rays is that a location in Hillsborough County and not in the urban core of Tampa is the right decision for them, if it means that the Rays stay here, and conversely, if the decision of the Rays is that they can find a way to make a deal work in Pinellas County that works for Pinellas County, I will be as supportive as I absolutely can possibly be. All of that being said, my preference from day one, when no one cared what I thought, has always been for a stadium in the urban core. I think that's what Major League Baseball wants. I think that's what the Rays want. And I think in terms of the redevelopment of downtown Tampa, at any number of potential sites, that would be the best solution. But at this point, that is vastly premature. There will be a number of sites that will be forthcoming, some that I know about, some that perhaps I don't. But I think we need to sift through those sites in conjunction with the Rays and figure out what the best decision is for all of us concerned. It will be a very expensive deal.
Well, Mayor, you already addressed the question I'm going to ask, but isn't it a bit like shopping for a location for a house and you have no idea how you're going to pay for it? Who's going to pony up $500 million to build a new stadium if the city of Tampa is not?
Well, I can tell you, Mark, it will not be me. I think the Rays are going to have to come to the table with a very significant sum of money in order for this deal to work. We are a mid-sized American market trying to support 3 major league franchises. It is not easy for us. I think anybody who thinks that it is living in a fantasy land. It's a tough sell for us. It's a tough sell for our jurisdictions collectively to be able to pay for this. I think the Rays need to be at the table as equal partners. I think the financing structure, unlike Raymond James Stadium, which was one source with all the benefits accruing to the owners, will never happen again, never should happen again. There will not be a referendum here solely for a stadium. So I think what you will see is a financing package that will be layered. I think we will have to look at options like rental car surcharge. I think we'll have to look at tourist development tax potentially as a source, along with some public financing. Obviously, if it is in the downtown area, and I'm going to get kind of wonky on you for a minute, but bear with me. If it's in the downtown area, there is tax increment financing dollars that potentially could be available. Those dollars within the defined jurisdiction of what's called the TIF, the Tax Increment Financing District, those monies have to be spent in that TIF. They cannot be spent in East Tampa, West Tampa, South Tampa, North. They have to be spent in that downtown area. If the stadium is located within those areas, we may have some flexibility. Now, all of that being said, we have other options that we are committing resources to as well, including Mr. Vinnick's redevelopment of the Channel Side area, which is contained in the tax increment financing district, the potential of a med school downtown. I've said from day one that a med school in downtown Tampa is bigger than baseball, and that is absolutely true. It's more sustainable, creates a more of a long-term economy, and fits perfectly within everything else we've tried to do here. So we're going to be as helpful as we can with what we have.
Mayor, where would a place like that stadium, size of that stadium, where would it fit in Tampa in general? Where would you think it would fit in?
Well, I think there's some locations within the downtown area, not necessarily in the central business district. I think there's a site immediately outside of downtown, between downtown and Ybor. It's currently Tampa Park Plaza Apartments. It is a Section 8 not public housing, Section 8 housing that is owned by one ownership group, which obviously makes it a little bit easier to deal with. It's of a size that could accommodate a stadium. There are other locations that have been mentioned. You've got the dog track, you've got the state fairgrounds, you've got the site where Raymond James is. But here's the challenge. And I think a lot of us recognize this. In order for that stadium to maximize its benefits, particularly if the public is investing in it, you want to put it in an environment where you're going to create ancillary development around it. That does not occur at the dog track. It does not occur at the state fairgrounds. The place you maximize that investment is in the urban core. That's what Major League Baseball has been trying to do for the last 10 years. And if you go down the list of new stadiums, they are all in the urban core. It's a smaller footprint. We don't need a 70,000 seat stadium here. We need a 35,000 seat stadium maximum. It's more intimate to give the fan experience a different dynamic. And it's in the urban core, and all the development that occurs around it inures to the benefit of the city or to the property owners around it. You want residential around it, you want retail around it, you want commercial around it, you want hospitality around it, you want office around it. You want to create an environment where the fans can walk to the stadium, whether they're living blocks away or they're working blocks away, and they get off at 4 o'clock and they can walk to the game and stay after the game on the Riverwalk or other places, or Ybor City.
What are some of the pluses you think the city would see if we received a stadium here?
Well, first of all, we don't want to lose a Major League franchise. That's where you start out. We love the Rays. Tampa is a baseball town. I would submit that, and I don't know this for a fact, but I would think it would be fairly accurate, that if you look at cities around the country that have produced Major League Baseball players and/or managers, Tampa would be up in the top 5. This is a city that loves baseball. Part of it is our Latin and Hispanic heritage. Part of it is the number of players that we have sent to the pros. Part of it is an environment, particularly in some of our signature programs, Belmont Heights and West Tampa Little League, that are historically have produced folks like Doc Gooden and Gary Sheffield and Tino Martinez and Luis Gonzalez, Lou Piniella, Tony La Russa grew up blocks from here in West Tampa. So we've got a history of supporting baseball. Wade Boggs. I mean, you just keep going down the list. My neighbor Derek Jeter, even though he's not a Tampanian. I think baseball would do well here. I think it would do better here than it does in St. Pete. But it's still, at the end of the day, it's how it pencils out at the bottom line. And as mayor, that's what my responsibility is to make sure whatever we invest as a city, that there are returns that warrant that investment.
Well, do you have a line in the sand? Do you have a limit in terms of how much public money from the city you'd be willing to invest?
Craig, I don't, because I don't know what the ask is. And I don't know what the stadium will look like. A lot will depend on whether it's domed or whether it's retractable. We were in Pittsburgh 3 weeks ago, and if I had my druthers, and it would be tough in Florida, to drop PNC Field, which is one of those throwback stadiums, right on the water, looking back at the skyline of Pittsburgh. I mean, it is an intimate, relatively small environment that was spectacular. If you could drop that stadium somewhere in the confines of downtown Tampa, it would be a winner. But in Florida, we need a dome. We need a roof, sadly. So that adds, maybe $100 million to the cost of it. So I don't know what the number is going to be. I know what our budget looks like, and it's still bleak. We have the options to finance some of this stuff going out over 30 years. But it's going to be a difficult negotiation. And we just don't have that much.
How do you sell Tampa to the Rays? Location, boosting attendance, why Tampa?
First of all, it's the media market itself is a media market they need to be in. This is not like the Buccaneer situation, I don't think, where there were plenty of suitors in 1994 for the Bucs. Baltimore was looking for a team. There were other places that they could play cities off of each other. I don't know that they want to give up this media market financially. I think the downtown location for the Rays is a big deal. I think the fact that the tradition of baseball in Tampa is a big deal for them. Even Coach Madden said a couple weeks ago on the radio that the Rays need to be in downtown Tampa. I think a walkable stadium will make a big difference. I think with all that's going on in downtown Tampa now, I mean, you've got 5 new residential towers that will break ground in the next year. You got 3 mid-rise residential complexes that are in the downtown area. Downtown is becoming the destination for the whole west coast of Florida. And if you're going to play baseball in Florida, Tampa's where you want to be.
We're waiting for Jeff Vinnick to reveal his plans
Yeah.
next week. I mean, it would seem that those plans probably don't include.
They don't.
a stadium.
They don't. I think Jeff is moving forward with his development. I don't think baseball fits, certainly not on his 23 acres. And the relocation of ConAgra would be tens of millions of dollars in additional expenses to an already expensive deal. I think there are other locations that are better. And, you know, and I've thought about that ConAgra site for a long time. The challenge with the ConAgra site is the ingress and egress and the transportation network around it would make it very, very problematic when you had something going on at the convention center, something going on at the Forum, and 80 games a year at a stadium with 15 to 20,000 fans a night. I believe in walkability. I don't believe in gridlock.
Mayor,
Yeah.
one of the problems the Tampa Bay Rays have in St. Petersburg is garnering enough corporate support, buying the suites, buying tickets. How is that going to change by moving the team to Tampa?
It goes back to the original question. It's still a tough sell, Mark. There will be some poaching of existing franchises. You know, it's like the new kid coming to school. You know, there will be some, you know, box holders and group ticket sales that will choose 1 out of the 2 or 1 out of the 3. It's still, I mean, any way you look at it, this is a tough market to support 3 teams. I mean, we can't ignore that fact. We are not New York. We're not Chicago. We're not LA. We don't have the corporate headquarters here that other cities have. We are probably the only, and Joe, maybe you can help me, the only mid-sized market of our size that has 4 if you count the Rowdies, professional sports franchises. It's a heavy lift for us. I think with a smaller stadium, it's manageable, but it's not going to be, you know, something that we can stick our heads in and ignore.
When you refer to a smaller stadium, it sounds as if you want to dust off the plans from, it was either 2007 or 2008 in St. Pete, but instead of the water there,
Yeah.
being underwater.
That was a good-looking stadium that they designed then. Now, it may have been designed specifically for that site. Obviously, anytime you can create sight lines that involve the water, a la San Francisco, it's a better, more attractive environment. I don't know how you would do it here unless you looked at that you know, the turning basin down by the channel, and that would end up requiring filling the back end of that channel. That's the only waterfront stadium you could get. I think the backdrop of an amazing skyline would probably be almost as sufficient. Yeah, I don't think there's any waterfront sites, Craig, that we could work. Yeah.
You mentioned, I mean, that Tampa's got all this residential growth going on, but St. Pete also is undergoing some pretty remarkable residential and retail growth. So what is it about the Tampa fan base that you think would do better in terms of filling up a stadium?
I think 2 things. I think closer proximity to Hillsborough County, Pasco County, and Polk County. Any way you look at it, going down to the Tropicana on a weeknight game is a challenge. And that's largely because of Interstate 275 traffic anyway. I think Tampa is always going to be the economic engine that drives the Bay Area. I mean, St. Pete is very complementary to what we do, but they don't have here what we have here, which is a larger market for corporations and businesses in the heart of downtown. I think with the growth here, I think it's going to be a more dynamic environment with the Riverwalk being completed. It adds amenities that perhaps St. Pete doesn't have in close proximity to the stadium. So I think, you know, I think if the Rays choose to stay, and I think they will, I think downtown Tampa or close to downtown Tampa is the best and most ideal location for them.
Mayor, can you talk a little bit about your role in this? I know you're a big regional advocate, but obviously you want them here and you want them in downtown Tampa. How do you balance that?
Well, you know, Mayor Kreisman and I knew this day would come. You know, and I preface this by saying Rick and I have been friends for 25 years. I mean, he and I just went to Chile together. We are big believers in regionalism, big believers in not engaging in sort of the the bickering that took place historically, the parochialism, we're not going to do that. I think Rick, by his decision yesterday, recognizes that he's got to give the Rays the ability to look. That wasn't a decision I forced on him. I have intentionally been very respectful of that contract and stayed out of their business until this moment occurred. But I think he recognizes that in the interest of the Bay Area, and I got to give him credit for being regional in his thinking, that he needs to let the Rays look. He's probably hopeful that the Rays will find a site in Pinellas or decide to stay where they are. And if that's the case, we're all going to live with it. But the most important thing was allowing them to look, because that will guarantee that they stay.
But from your perspective, I mean, how do you aggressively pursue that deal while still being a regional advocate?
Well, I think folks can see that it's more important that we keep the Rays. And that, are we going to compete for sites potentially? But that we're going to do it with a respect for each other and a recognition that whoever wins, as long as we keep them here, the other side's going to be just as supportive. I mean, if they choose to go to Gateway or Carillon or somewhere in that area, and that's the right decision, that's okay. I'm fine. I mean, I'll drive over to the games. Would I prefer it in downtown Tampa? Sure.
That's
Yeah.
surprising. You've just spoken about how competitive you are and how much
I'm
you hate
fiercely
to lose.
competitive, yeah.
This is a big one.
It is, but sometimes you got to be a better man than I can't. This is not about me. It's not even about Tampa. It's about keeping the Rays in the region, and Tampa's going to do just fine. But I don't want to lose them. And yeah, I'm competitive as hell. But more importantly, it's that we keep this team and they're successful. Yeah, Jerry.
Commissioner Hagan, I think, was rounding up a work group
Uh-huh.
or negotiating team. Is that set now?
I think it's in. I mean, it's been in formation for a while, and I think the key players you guys are probably aware of: Commissioner Hagan, Eric Hart, who's the executive director of the Tampa Sports Authority, Chuck Sykes, who led the ABC committee, which was the preliminary committee 2 years ago that looked at all the options and the financing models, Brian Lamb, who is the CEO of Fifth Third Bank, myself, and I would imagine there'll be one or two others that will be added to the list. And it's an informal group, and we're just going to it's not official, it's not any governmental agency, it's people that have been involved and want to make sure that we keep this thing heading in the right direction.
What do you expect that group's role to be?
I think sort of a convener, Rick, facilitator, helping the Rays, acquire information, sort of looking at the financing models potentially, looking at what government can or can't do. We're not going to be brokers of real estate. That's going to be between the Rays and whoever owns the parcels. I mean, to the extent that we can be helpful facilitating this discussion and getting the Rays the information they need to make their decision, that's what we'll do. Yeah.
What is your message to taxpayers who, don't get money for parking
Yeah.
or concessions, or, what are
Well-
they getting out of this and what will it cost?
Well, that's yet to be determined. Certainly in the Buccaneer deal, they get none of the above, which is why we'll never do a deal like that again. I think if this is going to be a partnership with the Rays, there ought to be opportunities for revenue sharing. There are opportunities for taxpayers to not recoup their investment, but prosper as a result of it. So this will be a very different deal than what you see at Raymond James Stadium. In that deal, it's a 30-year bond deal. It's one source of revenue, the community investment tax. It is entirely a one-sided deal to the benefit of the owners. That was a different time and a different place in professional sports, and I don't think you'll ever see anything like that again. Yeah, I hope not. That parking, concessions, that all went to the ownership group up to a point, but somehow you rarely get to that point where the public benefits. Yeah, Rick.
As sites are put forward for consideration, how important do you think it is that the public knows what those sites are and know what the proposals are? And
Well, I'm sure all of you in the room will make sure they know what the sites are. I think it's healthy for public involvement. Ultimately, it's going to become I don't want to say a public facility, but it's the public's team. And so I want them to take ownership. I want them to be engaged. I want them to be comfortable with whatever the decision is. You know, there will be people that will object to any participation by local government in this deal. But I think there's a majority of people that recognize that having a professional sports franchise is a good thing for a community. They like the Rays. They love Joe Madden. The Rays, with a very limited budget, have been a very competitive team. When the Rays are winning, this town is, excited. And I think they want to keep that. That's part of the ambiance of a big city. So to the extent that we will be able to keep people involved and aware, yeah, we'll do the best we can. I mean, I got nothing to hide.
Mayor, kind of a logistical question. The group that you mentioned, a couple government leaders, an agency in large part funded by government, are those meetings going to be public meetings, or are those behind?
Yeah, I don't know, Mark, at this point. I don't know whether they'll be, and the lawyers will probably tell us whether they're subject to the sunshine.
Lawyers or your lawyers?
Either one. It doesn't matter. I don't care one way or the other. I mean, there'll be strategy sessions that I'm not going to be able to tell you what took place. But for me, I want this process to be as open and as transparent as we can when we can. In order for us to be successful in this, the public has to understand what we're doing, why we're doing, and to the extent possible, buy into what we're doing.
So, for example, if the Rays put out an RFP asking for stadium sites, and they got some responses, and they briefed this group privately, would you all discuss
I think it would.
each of those sites? What they are?
Well, I mean, if the Rays put out the RFP, that would be determined, I think, by what the Rays want to talk about. If the city puts out an RFP, you're going to know everything that we know. If it's a private transaction between the Rays and a landowner, probably not. Yeah,
Okay.
but that would be up to them.
Do you foresee any kind of scenario where there is a public referendum on building a stadium?
I don't know. I don't think a standalone referendum on a baseball stadium would either pass or be proposed. Whether somewhere down the road the stadium is included in another referendum that has any number of other things associated with it, I don't know. I can't tell you that. Certainly at this point, Rick, that's not being anticipated. You bet, everybody. Thanks.